Hey everybody, it's Shane at Pulse Personal Training, and today we're going to have a talk about why it's important to vary your repetition range when you're doing your weight training. And what I mean by that is making sure that you're not just staying in one small range where you're doing like 8 to 10 repetitions or you're only doing sets of 20. This is based on a conversation I had earlier with a client today where I drew up a graph demonstrating why it was important for us in our particular situation. She's in the middle of something where we're doing sets as high as 30 repetitions, and if you guys are familiar with lifting weights, you know those sets can really burn. They can be mentally challenging, and they often require you to lower the weight that you're using, which can be a bit of a psychological defeat. You feel like you're not strong anymore because you're using lighter weights. So to demonstrate that, I drew up this graph explaining to her why our expectations in that 30 repetition range for her in particular shouldn't be that amazing, because we don't spend a lot of time there. And I'm going to go ahead and start drawing and show you why. I'm going to use the blue marker. The blue marker is going to represent someone like myself, someone who trains classically as a bodybuilder, or just basically trains in that 8 to 12 repetition range, what we would know as muscular hypertrophy training. So down here on the bottom, I've got repetitions running along the scale, and over here I've got skill moving in the vertical. And what we're going to look at is where am I best? What rep range? Since I train the majority of my training as a person who's interested in gaining muscle, I'm strongest in the 8 to 12 range. That's going to be the amount of repetitions it takes for me to get the desired result, and I've done the bulk of my training in that range, therefore that's where I'm strong. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to go ahead and use myself as a dotted blue line. So when it comes to my skill level, when it comes to doing single repetitions, let's say here's 5. I'm not terrible at doing single repetitions, but let's say in the 1 to 3 repetition range, I'm pretty decent at that. But when I get to there'd be a sudden peak. Now I'm in the 10 repetition range, and 10, 11, 12, this is where I'm best. And then as I start to approach 15 repetitions, 16, 17 repetitions, 18, 19, 20. Normally, most of my sets are going to stay below 20 repetitions, but in the event of an emergency, or in her situation, or what we're doing, where we're trying to go beyond a certain point where we're establishing a lactic acid threshold, we're training for a condition in which she has to fight that burn. My skill set, because I don't do those all the time, I might rapidly drop after 20 and have a very low skill level as I approach 30 repetitions. And she was in a very similar situation like this. Classically, having trained for muscle gain, the skills were very high, nearly peak skill level in the 8 to 12 range. So we had, 8 and 12 here. This was that range for someone like me or someone like her who's been training the majority of the time for muscle. So for another example, I'm going to pull out a red pen. The red pen is going to represent someone who's more interested in strength training, someone who's been more interested in powerlifting, and therefore they've spent the majority of their time in a lower repetition range. They've been focused on strength and not necessarily accumulating muscle. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do a red line for them. Let's say down here in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 range, they may come hot off up here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe we kind of plateau 11, 12, and then maybe 13, 14, 15, trending downwards. And if we have to go above 25, you may see that line going down. So this was strength, and then the blue one here was hypertrophy, HY. Someone who's been training exclusively for strength, and primarily for strength, I would say, is going to be strongest with 1 repetition to 5 repetitions. These are going to be situations where maybe you don't have to breathe a whole lot. You don't find yourself getting winded as much. And you're going to be stronger because you've been training for so long to be strong at single repetition exercises. How much can you deadlift one time? How much can you bench press one time? You may exhibit a higher skill level in the 1 to 5 range, and then you quickly see this descent. And what do we see here between the two of these is especially someone who's done this over time, 5 years, 10 years worth of training, you may have very much specialized in a rep range. And what is this all getting at? What's the importance? Basically is to say that occasionally in your training program, you need to take variations outside of your habitual repetition range. Whatever area that you do the bulk of your training, I'll pick on myself because I'm the blue line here. If I do the bulk of my training in the 8 to 12 range, that means at some point throughout the year, on a calendar full year of training, I need to do some strength work where I'm forced to work down as low as maybe triples and occasionally testing my single repetition maximums and stuff like that so that I can expand my skill set, you know, and maybe be, when I'm training my heavier stuff as a bodybuilder, maybe the sets of 6, you know, if I work in this strength range, I come back, that's the red line, I almost drew a red line. When I come back, maybe the next time after that strength period, I can move this line, right? So that I've got a better 3 to 8 repetition range. And that might help me add muscle, or vice versa, all the way on the other end. Here's where we drew 20. Let's say I go through a period for 6 weeks where I take movements like leg extensions or tricep extensions, movements that really benefit from this high repetition type of stuff. And I go through 6 to 8 weeks of training in the very, very high rep range, sometimes as high as 30. And let's say as a result of that, I'm able to take my blue line. Here's where 20 started getting hard. Let's say now maybe it doesn't dive as fast. We may still end up down there. But compared to where that ghost line was, maybe spending 6 to 8 weeks in the 30 repetition range is the reason the next time I'm working down in a more hypertrophic range of like 15 to 20 in some instances, I'm able to finish those sets either with more continuous tension or with better control or more weight. Something about me training up in the 30s is going to make my sets of 20 more effective. And this is easier to show, obviously, on a strength scale. If I'm trying to build muscle, let's say I've been training for strength for a very long time, I'm a very strong guy, and I exhibit my strength well below 5 or 6 repetitions, but I've decided I want to lose some of the body fat and I want to look more muscular and add muscle. I need to expand my skill set in the ranges between 8 and 12, 8 and 15, 8 and 20. So I need to start training less in the range of 1 to 5 repetitions, and I need to shift the bulk of my training into these higher rep areas. So let's say, as daunting as it may be, if you're used to training in sets of 3, sets of 5, and the idea of set of 8 gets you winded, you might need to go through a period of time where you're spending up to 6 to 8 weeks training with sets of up to 20. And what you could do, let's see if I can wipe this smoothly. Over that time period, let's say you took that dramatic drop in your performance and we were able to stop that descent and maybe stay 1 or 2 reps higher and see that descent be a little less dramatic, you know, a little bit more of a gradual slope. So you invest 6 to 8 weeks out here where the training is going to be more maybe physically uncomfortable at the time. Those higher rep sets obviously burn more. Like I said earlier, you're forced to reduce the weight, which can be egotistically destructive. If you pride yourself on strong, big weights and you're forced to do higher rep sets, putting lighter weight on can be a test for the ego because we don't want to do rest pause sets. We want continuous reps all the way out here. But working in these expanded ranges, essentially what I'm getting at, and what I want this conversation to help with is why, even if you're not necessarily training for bodybuilding purposes, should you train like a bodybuilder occasionally? Or why, if you're training for strength, would you think about expanding all the way into these high rep ranges? Because if you've got a calendar year, and more than a calendar year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you know, how long are you going to be training and lifting weights? And how often do you ever vary outside of your comfort zone? It's one of those fitness cliches to say that, you know, growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And even if growth, specifically hypertrophic muscle growth, isn't what you're looking for, the variations in your rep ranges can make a difference. So for the client I spoke to today, I drew this same graph, albeit a smaller, more rapid version of it, to kind of just showcase what it can do to you to go outside of those ranges, and hopefully why, when coming back to the core of what's important to you, and in this case, muscle growth, if I've expanded my skill set on either side of that, either by being able to deal with higher repetitions, and being more efficient at clearing out lactic acid, being a better breather, being able to maintain the psychological focus that's required to do a set of 30, even though you know it sucks during the exercise to do that. Or vice versa, becoming a stronger bodybuilder, moving heavier weights for a shorter period of time, and then translating that skill into more weight moved back into your comfortable rep range. Both of those are fantastic ways to break a plateau. If you're bored with your training or you're not seeing progress, maybe you shift into the heavier stuff. Or if you're bored with your training and you're not seeing any progress, maybe you shift into the higher repetition stuff, because maybe going into those uncomfortable zones, either above or below your normal training ranges, make a huge difference and help bust a plateau. So that's a lot of information to soak up, and if that helps at least one person, then it was worth saying out loud. At least it helped one person earlier today. So there you go. Reasons to vary your rep ranges based on expanding your comfort zone. 2 examples, right? Bodybuilder and strength trainer, and why those lines correlate. My name is Shane, and this is Pulse Personal Training. We do this type of stuff from time to time. So if you have a subject you're interested in, or you have a question based on this, please leave a comment. If you like the video, hit the like button, hit the share button if you think it would help, or if you want to watch it later if it was too long, share it and come back later. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.